In this world, there existed the species called the Dragonkins. The Dragonkins could be divided into Dragon and Wyrm, which was then even further split into 4 subspecies: Pseudo-Dragon, Dragon, Dinosaur and Ouroboros. 1. The explanation of these 4 from the weakest to the strongest goes as follows. Pseudo-Dragon was the CLA.S.sification given to those mutated from the lizards or snakes which originally had outer appearances similar to that of dragons. Although they were CLA.S.sified as part of the Dragonkin, they were technically not dragons. These pseudo-dragons were the post-mutated species of reptiles such as Komodo dragons and giant girdled lizards which also existed back on Earth. Once they were mutated by Mana, as they could only be described as dragon-like magical beasts, they were called pseudo-dragons too. Needless to say, the wyverns that Mars were previously controlling was within this category. As a side note, the pre-mutated state of the wyvern was the gliding lizard. 3. Additionally, when the snakes mutated, as their outer appearances became similar to those of Wyrms, they were sometimes called pseudo-Wyrms. It was truly confusing, for if one were to ask why there were such confusing and needless distinctions and categorizations, that was because, during the initial consumer release of the game, the dragon-like monster was Embera.S. singly introduced as a small fry monster. 5. Later on, when the setting for the dragon was established, players retorted back, Tsukumai, by saying dragon already came out during the initial release, which stumped the developers on what to do about their game. The developers had completely forgotten that they had already introduced dragons as small fry monsters. As they could not come up with a solution to this issue, they made up the confusing settings of pseudo-dragons as an excuse after saying those are not dragons. They're just fake dragons, a mutated form of snakes. And that was the circuit behind the birth of the pseudo-dragons. Needless to say, as they were merely reptiles which had mutated into magical beasts with their outer appearances resembling those of dragons, they were not actually dragons. As a consequence, their abilities were not significant and were merely strong-looking small fries. Although they were merely fakes, as their outer appearances were cool, they were popular amongst the tamers. Next was the dinosaurs. These creatures existed from the past in this world of Midgard and were authentic dinosaurs that had not yet been wiped out. In other words, dinosaurs were merely animals and thus not even magical beasts. Notwithstanding, the dinosaurs were quite strong to the extent of easily eating weaker magical beasts, demons, and adventurers. At the very least, they were a significantly scarier and stronger group compared to the pseudo-dragons. To begin with, as the recent research on the dinosaurs back on Earth had established that dinosaurs had feathers on them, I believe the dinosaurs here were quite different from the dinosaurs there. 6. Essentially, they looked like giant reptile that were often portrayed in the 20th century artworks of the dinosaurs. The next on the list was dragon. Fundamentally in this world, when one mentions the word dragon, this category was what they were describing. These creatures were also magical beasts that were mutated by Mana. However, their original form was what made them so fearsome. That was because this category of dragon was the result of the aforementioned dinosaurs that had mutated. Even in the base form, the dinosaurs were already monstrously strong, thus after the mutation, they became ridiculously and stupidly overpowered. Back on Earth, there was a movie where the dinosaur was transformed into a monster due to the exposure to the radioactivity. 7. It was essentially the same situation. Dragons had huge and hard bodies as well as the ability to breathe out fire. As a consequence, even if the average players back in the game challenged a single dragon by banding together, they had to struggle through a difficult battle. In particular, those dragons which had mutated from the carnivorous dinosaurs were especially dangerous. Using the likes of 7 luminaries as an example, even if Mars cloned himself 10 times and challenged a dragon, he would still lose even against a single one. Notwithstanding, there was a monster that overshadowed those already overpowered monsters. And that was what was in front of my eyes, Ouroboros. Heavenly Ouroboros level, 1000 species, Ouroboros attribute, Sun HP, 10.00000/10.0000000 SP, STR, Strength/Attack Power, Dex, Dexterity, VIT, Vitality, Int, Intelligence, AGI, Ability/Speed, MND, Mind Power, Luck, I used my observing eyes to check the status, but just this time alone, I was happy that I could not see anything. Its HP was such a high value that I had never seen before, and its SP was particularly scary as it was set at infinity. In other words, it was one of those common situations in the game where only the enemy can use whatever and however many skills they want to use. Perhaps this was because the Ouroboros were considered to be the protectors of the world, so they could tap into the power of the world an unlimited number of times. The 5 Ouroboroses existed, I see. I had heard of the term 5 Ouroboroses before. Although they were only mentioned in the lore, I thought I knew about their existence. But looking at the thing that was in front of me, I understood that it was not good. It was something that must never be woken up, something out of our dimension. I will say it bluntly. Even having Rupp as a spec, I did not feel like I could win against that. I would probably be able to put up a good fight, but I would still lose due to the overwhelming difference in our HP. Even assuming that I was able to constantly dish out my max damage, it's suggesting that you wouldn't be able to defeat it unless you can attack it 101 times. 8 just perhaps, it may be possible if I teamed up with the entire cast of 7 heroes back in their prime. Even though it was merely sleeping, I could feel how dangerous it was in my bones. I could feel the tingling sensation just by looking at its sleeping face. Normally, they are in an eternal hibernation state. However, when the world faces a true peril, they will wake up and fulfill their duties to protect. Is the reason I sealed up this place to contain this guy. In practice, my containment barrier doesn't have the power to seal an Ouroboros. However, by maintaining the surrounding in a state that it previously was, whatever happens outside would not be sensed by the Ouroboros, and thus it would be deluded into thinking that the peace was still being maintained. The reason I drove everyone out of Vanaheim back then was to prevent the people from becoming collateral damage during the 1 in a million chance the Ouroboros wakes from its slumber. Just a while ago, Ares and others went on a rampage, but I was also dumbfounded and fluid-teared. Good thing it didn't wake up, but if it had woken up, my effort for the past 200 years would be gone down the drain. Apologies. I was sweating from my palm and appreciated the good luck that we had. I neither thought nor expected that there would be a slumbering dragon, but if it had woken up from our uproar a moment ago, it would have been game over for all of us. Or maybe not. It might be possible for us to successfully run away. Did Merak and the others know about this thing's existence? Even amongst the Flugels, only a few of them knew about its existence. I naturally assume Merak knew about it. However, they believed this Ouroboros to be a guardian deity of some sort. Guardian deity. I see, so the water dragon Levia in Svalin was an imitation of this. Yes. It was a fake deity that Migres created using the Ouroboros as a model. That is what Levia is. Guardian deity, huh? Indeed, Levia had the majestic aura to deserve that T.I.tle. Notwithstanding, once the creature had too much of that majestic aura to the point of destroying everything in its surrounding every time it moved, it simply became a destruction deity. At the very least, in my personal view, knowing that there were 4 more of these things around, I thought that it was more of a reason that I could not come to admire them as a guardian deity. Wasn't that right? Think about it. If the G.O.Dis suddenly had a whim to simultaneously take all 5 of these guys out on a stroll, the world would end at that point. Just by moving, the surrounding would be destroyed and people would die. Something like that was no longer a guardian deity. It was a destruction deity. Guardian deity, this thing was too enormous to name itself that. In the past, Milady planned to destroy the G.O.Dis scenario. Nevertheless, even if it was Milady, there was no chance of winning against the G.O.Dis and the 5 Ouroboroses combined might at the same time. Therefore, Milady decided to plan ahead and sealed the 5 Ouroboroses first. Furthermore, you decided to take the Demon King down first before unifying and gathering the whole Midgard with its might to challenge the G.O.Dis to a war. Once the world is in grave danger, it will awaken, is that what you said? What is the criterion for the world to be considered in grave danger? At the moment, the humanoids have already been driven into a corner by the demons. Should the current situation not be considered a grave danger to the world? I also do not know. However, I believe the criterion is solely based on the G.O.Dis's arbitration of the situation. The fact that she has not once in history decided to wake the Ouroboros up means that she has never considered that to be a grave danger, or that she approves of the situation. Is that what you're trying to say? Exactly. Approval, huh? That's honestly still the better case. The worst case scenario would be that she was promoting it. That she was personally ordering the demons to attack the humanoids. That would be the worst case scenario. And judging by the current situation of the world, there was a high chance that was indeed the case. Anyways, perhaps I should call the past Rupas reckless. Whatever was said about her, she was aiming too high. There was not much to say, as let alone the G.O.Dis or the Ouroboroses. She was defeated by the 7 heroes before she even managed to defeat the Demon King, after all. Are the others also being sealed? Correct. After receiving life from Milady, Tauros the Bull is in charge of the Earth Ouroboros. Aquarius the Water Bearer is on the Fire Ouroboros. I am on the Heavenly Ouroboros. And lastly, the Wood Ouroboros is sealed by Gemini the twins after they each drove OU, after evacuating the original citizens of the land. How about the Moon Ouroboros? The Moon Ouroboros alone has yet to be found. It should be somewhere in the world, but the Moon Ouroboros, huh? It couldn't be living on the moon as its name suggests, could it? I momentarily had such a thought but convinced myself it couldn't be the case. Considering that Sun Ouroboros was on Midgard and not in the sun, the Moon Ouroboros should definitely be here somewhere as well. 9 In other words, should the G.O.Dis feel like ordering it to move, it was currently in a state to be able to take action. No, perhaps it had already started moving and no one noticed it yet? Thank you for letting me know. Let's return to where everyone else is, part he knows. Understood. In any event, I was curious as to why the Rupas of the past sought to pick a fight with the G.O.Dis. Various affairs that I did not know about kept popping out one after another, and I did not even know what was what anymore. But there was one thing that I now understood. G.O.Dis's scenario, rebellion, and G.O.Dis's tricks. Now that it came to this point, even an idiot like me knew what was happening and why I was here in this place. For the G.O.Dis, Rupas Moffel was most likely a very, very troublesome existence. An annoying existence for her. And of course, she was. There was no other way to describe a person that was plotting a rebellion in the world that was created by her. Thus the G.O.Dis played some sort of little trick to seal the memory of Rupas who was being resurrected. And that little trick was, me. What the H.E.L.I was this sh_t, AAG.O.D. It truly was a pile of sh_t. I truly was just an unnecessary and extra presence. I was just a gimmick to blanket the real Rupas and serve as a lid to prevent her from being able to reach her goal. That was the new role that the G.O.Dis granted to me. 10 By using an outsider like me as a blanket, she managed to seal the real Rupas and even make the original goal forgotten and lost. But I did not understand. Why me? If Rupas was in the way, it would have been better for her to place someone else who would be devoted to the G.O.Dis. In any event, an objective for my journey just increased. Whatever I had to do, I would meet up with the G.O.Dis and get it out of her why she got me involved in all of this. No, that's wrong. It didn't increase. I just finally acquired it for the first time. Until now, I was just someone who was doing this and that and going with the flow without a real objective in mind. I had never left the starting point until now. 11 In all likelihood, even that was one of the ploys within the G.O.Dis's tricks. She had most probably chosen someone who moved aimlessly on their whim. Someone who was optimistic and went with the flow without worrying about anything. There was no doubt that she had purposefully chosen some idiot like that. In other words, someone like me. After feeling happy that I was summoned into another world, I felt like going on a journey, so I did. I then found out that the 12 heavenly stars were causing havoc, so I decided to gather them because I felt like it. I knew I wouldn't move around at all if there was no goal, so I created a goal on a whim and just went with the flow otherwise. But this time, it's different. I want to know. I want to know why the G.O.Dis brought me from the other world. Why she chose me over others. I was not able to let things slide without finding that out. And most of all, I could not feel good knowing that I was being used by someone, somewhere without even knowing the reason why. The reason the G.O.Dis put me into Rupas was because Rupas was an annoying existence for her. Therefore I was used as a way to blanket the original Rupas. Then it was fine. If that was what the G.O.Dis disliked, then that would be what I would do. I would find out what the original goal of Rupas was and I would do what original Rupas was going to do. If I did something like that, even the G.O.Dis would not stay silent. Without a doubt, she would come into contact with me. As such, I was going to put my all into chasing after myself, Rupas. I would follow in her footsteps and achieve what she was trying to do. This was not my sense of justice, it was also not what one would call courage, and of course, it was not out of concern for the distressing future of the world. It was simply a grudge. It was simply retaliation against the G.O.Dis who had gotten me involved. After we regrouped with Dina and the crew, we decided to leave Vainheimer. Considering the reason for the seal to be placed in that location, there was nothing left for us to do at that place. We were also orally informed of the locations of the other sealed Ouroboroses and the respective 12 heavenly stars from Parthinos. Therefore, if there was no other location to go in the future, we could give them a visit. According to Parthinos, the reason for why it had to be given verbally was because we don't know where the G.O.Dis is hiding. Please take care, Rupasama. The G.O.Dis possesses a special power called Avatar. The G.O.Dis will not move on her own. However, she has the ability to create a clone based on what she thinks is ideal and to incite people into doing what she wants to be done. In other words, you may believe some random villager to be an ordinary powerless individual, however that person may turn out to be the G.O.Dis. That was what she said. There were 3 locations the Ouroboroses were sealed. Firstly, the location where the Earth Ouroboros was sealed was the underground world Helheim, also known as Hell. One might recall that the H.E.L.I was Agakaros's birthplace. It was a high-difficulty dungeon where a great number of devil-type monsters resided. Although the truth was unknown, it was said that the souls of deceased evildoers also cycled back and reincarnated here. Nevertheless, it was undisputed truth that evil spirits sometimes appeared as enemies in Helheim. This place was sealed by the bull Taurus. Next was Fire Ouroboros. This guy was sealed in the very far end of the south. In what was currently serving as the domain of the demons, eternal burning land of Muspelheim 12, the protector of this seal was Aquarius the water bearer. Aquarius was an important person who could wield water arcane magic, but it seemed it had been sent that way. Well, fortunately, there was still Dina who would use water arcane magic. Last on the list was Wood Ouroboros. The current residence of this guy was the land of the fairies, Alfheimr. It was a forest of light where the fairies came from. And in the game, there was nothing but fairies and spirits as enemies in that place. And the one who sealed this place was Gemini of the twins. Just as its name suggested, it was a strange star where 2 people served as one. Due to their existences, 12 heavenly stars had a dumb composition of having 13 individuals even though it's called 12 heavenly stars. In any event, meeting up with them would have to wait. There was no use for me to just casually show up in the sealed locations, nor was there anything for me to do in those places. Additionally, it was not as if they were burdening people by being in those places. For now, I was planning to find the other 12 heavenly stars who were in the domains of the humanoids. Having said that, if I recalled correctly, Alfheimr was still barely in the domain influenced by the humanoids, so I did not mind giving that place a short visit. I apologize, Rupasama. In truth, I also want to go, but as you can see, I am already deceased. As such, I am no longer able to be of use to you. It's fine, do not worry about it. I appreciate your will and conviction on displaying your loyalty even after death. Your kind words are too much for someone like me. However, please don't worry. Although I can't go personally, I will send Virgo after you in my stead. Wah. 13 Due to Parthinos's remark, Virgo was taken back. It seemed Parthinos had neither informed nor checked up with Virgo. Oi Parthinos. Was it really alright to send her out without even saying anything to her? She's still inexperienced, but I have taught her all the basic minimums that she needs to know. I'm sure she will be of some use to you. Grandma. I still don't know anything. My grandchild, listen. I am not going to approve of you wanting to stay and live in these forests. Just go out and have a look around the world. Right now, it's something important for you to do. Parthinos pushed the unconvinced and unenthusiastic Virgo into Tanaka and decided things on her own. Well yeah, it was not as if I did not appreciate her coming along. Considering that Parthinos had already said away, the new maiden was required, and since she was already over level 300, she would be considered a very superior personnel by this age's standard. Furthermore, since she was not a demon, if she was nurtured properly, she could naturally reach level 1000, thus it was not a dream to say that she could potentially become the next 12 heavenly stars in the end. If we continued to power level her and leave the role of stopping the enemy to her, eventually she should reach a level cap 14. Additionally, as she was a flugel, she should know how to use divine magic like the back of her hand and should have a naturally high base stat. She could also fly. Yeah, not bad at all. Well, it would be good if she is willing herself. Are you fine with it, Virgo? You. Well, since Grandma said stuff like that already, even if I try to stay behind in the forest, I'll just get chased out. So, PL, please take care of me from now on. And just like that, the second maiden, Virgo, became our comrade and our traveling companion as we left Vinayamar behind. The sight of Parthinos waving her hand from behind until the very moment we could no longer see her left a lasting impression. I did not know what to say, but I supposed there really was those type of people that were energetic even after their deaths. I guess it would be a good idea to come and visit her the next time I was in this area. Author note, Rupas, just out of curiosity, what's your weapon? Virgo, I use things like a staff or a cane. Rupas, oh, she's normal sensible person. Deeply emotional, Parthinos when she was still young, everyone. Have you got your large logs? Let's go. Author note end, __1 official explanation by the author is given in the end of the chapter. Author note of chapter 27. But here are 4 pictures of my interpretation in the following order: Pseudo-dragon, dragon, western dragon, dinosaur, and Ouroboros eastern dragon. Pseudo-dragon, source, Monster Hunter World Wyvern Gem Dragon, source, https://mgur.com/gallery/s5f9j, Dragon Dinosaur, source, https://www.youtube.com/watch?v=r recamgw who write (dinosaurs Ouroboros, source 1, infinity, source 2, Shenlong, dragon b.a.l.l.s source 3, Kaido, One Piece, Ouroboros infinita Shenlong Kaido Ouroboros 2. Here is what Komodo dragon and giant girdled lizards look like. Komodo dragon giant girdled lizards giant girdled lizard 3. Here is the image of the gliding lizards dragon lizard Dracovolans.jpg4. Okay, so, in j.a.paints, both the western and eastern dragons are called Ryu, Yu. If you wanted to mention a dragon, both the and can be used interchangeably, just as we use the word dragon to describe both dragon and WIRM in general conversation. Having said that, as you can see from the images above, there's a distinction between giant lizard dragon that is often depicted in the Western media/literature and long snake-like body dragon that is depicted in the Eastern media/literature. Here the author split the dragons into 4 types and used the 2 written form to separate them into different categories, subspecies. In the translations, we will using the word dragon to mean the Western dragon and Ouroboros/WIRM to mean the Eastern dragon. Bringing back to the context, the author used the fake Ryu, Yu, for both the pseudo-dragon and pseudo-WIRM, but again, the written form is different. That is the main reason the narration, Rupas, is saying it is confusing, because in j.a.paints it's literally the same process of mutation, origin, when saying it out loud, using the Ryu that's used interchangeably, etc., except in the written form. Furthermore, WYRM will be used to describe a snake-like dragon and Ouroboros will be used to mean the fourth type of dragonkin. 5. Probably one of the following: 1. Closed beta, 2. Open beta, 3. Base game without DLC, 4. Base game before any updates, pretty much CBT, 1/OBT, 2. 6. Special thanks to a commenter who linked me to an article about this research. 7G.O.Jilla 8. I don't know if this is a J.A. proverb or a reference to something. I googled it, but it seems to be some reference to a J.A. online MMO. 9. Sun Ouroboros equals Heavenly Ouroboros. 10. Refer to Chapter 1. Would you like to be granted a new role? 11. Literal translation: I had never landed my feet on the ground. 12. https://n.wikipedia.org/wiki/Yggdrasil. 9. Worlds of the Yggdrasil in the Norse mythology. https://en.wikipedia.org/wiki/Norse_cosmology #9_worlds Asgard. https://n.wikipedia.org/wiki/Asgard. Home of G.O.ds, Odin, Thor etc. Valhalla is within Asgard. Vanaheimr. https://n.wikipedia.org/wiki/Vanaheimr. Home of Vanir, group of G.O.ds. associated with fertility, wisdom, and the ability to see the future. i.e. second tribe of G.O.ds, Alfheimr. https://n.wikipedia.org/wiki/%c3%81 Alfheimr. Home of the light elves, i.e. fairies, fae, elves. Midgard. https://n.wikipedia.org/wiki/Midgard. Name for Earth, home to human. Jotunheimr. https://n.wikipedia.org/wiki/J%c3%b6 Tunheimr. Home to giants. Muspelheim. https://n.wikipedia.org/wiki/Muspelheim. Realm of fire. Svartalfheim. https://n.wikipedia.org/wiki/Svart%c3%a1 Home of black/dark elves. Niflheim. https://n.wikipedia.org/wiki/Niflheim. Realm of ice and cold. Neoavalir. https://n.wikipedia.org/wiki/ni%c3%b0 Avelir. Home of the dwarves. TP. Wait, what happened to Helheim? XD. Answer to my question from Vecna Sensei. The other translator/editor. The 9 worlds vary according to sources. Sometimes, Helheim and Niflheim are considered the same world. Other times, Svartalfheim and Nidavellir are considered the same world instead. In which case, dark elves and dwarves are considered the same race. In addition, Muspelheim is sometimes excluded from the 9 worlds because it pre-existed, along with Niflheim and Ginnungagap, before the creation of the worlds. It's a little messy. 13. The author used, which is a character that's no longer used in J.A. Paints. It's P.R.O. Nounced we and used in olden times. Author's pretty much trying to convey at, but in a way Virgo is fumbling. So English equivalent would be like what a what, of at, or what. I don't know which version is better or more fitting, so I just picked one on a whim. 14. Power leveling can mean few different things, but the one that applies here is when the high-level player, like Rupas, carries a low-level player by grinding mobs so that the low-level player gets EXP fast. Effectively, Virgo will just need to be in the party and she will level up from shared EXP, potentially even to level cap. Level cap means the maximum level. TP. Someone carry my character to max level. Extra note, although not followed by Vecna or me, because English don't really have it, part Hino speaks in a way that only old women do. It's just one of those things in J.A. Paints that English doesn't really have. __. It was sudden, but I decided to try and review what I had been doing until now and reorganize my goal from now on. I believed it was important to conduct a review like this once in a while. If I did not do so, what we were doing might not correspond to our aim. It was also very possible that by the time we noticed things, we were already completely off track. Firstly, my original goal was to look around and explore this world. Nevertheless, with the situation as it was, there was no longer any room for me to say things like that. Furthermore, as I was already on a journey, it could be said that this goal was already being fulfilled. Next, to retrieve the 12 heavenly stars and to meet with the 7 heroes. Up to this point, I had retrieved Aries, Libra, Agacaros, Parthinos, stayed back in the forest and was replaced by Virgo, totaling up to 4 of them. Dina originally said that she was aware of the locations of 6 of them, thus using the information that she possessed, it was only possible to find 2 more of them. Furthermore, she had also stated that 2 out of those 6 are under the Demon King. There was no doubt, those 2 was referring to Agacaros and the Scorpion. In other words, information for 5 out of those 6 was already ascertained. Which meant there were only 1 left that could be found using her information as the basis. However, due to the information given by Parthinos, we now knew the location of the twins, the water bearer and the bull. Out of what was remaining, I was also informed that Lion was stuck in a war with Bennett Nash. In summary, 4 stars were under my hands and the location of the 5 stars were already determined. Retrieval completed, Ram, Scales, Goat, Maiden. Known locations, Twins, Water Bearer, Bull, Scorpion, Lion. Unknown locations, Archer, Fish, Crab. If I were to write it in the way that was easy to understand, it would be something like this. What was to come was a little concerning. As for the reunion with the 7 heroes, I have met with Megrez and Merak. All that was remaining was Bennett Nash. Notwithstanding, this Bennett Nash was pretty troublesome. Apparently, she still retained her power from her peak, and that she did not predict I.P.8 in the battle against the Demon King. Furthermore, it seemed that she was completely hostile to me, thus she was a very dangerous existence. Having said that, it was not as if I could not predict something like this would happen. To begin with, the 7 heroes had the history of defeating me in the past, as such, there was already some form of hostility in our relations. H.I+P. If anything, acting friendly with me would be considered strange. The 2 I had previously met was acting like rubber duckies that was stuck on the ceiling, whilst swimming in the stars whilst covering a quacky version of Friday. The 2 that I had previously met were acting so friendly towards me that I had let my guard down. However, in a way, Bennett Nash's reaction was what would be considered a normal and correct response. At the very least, it was far better than seeing regret from the people after they had defeated me. It was easy to understand, however, it was bad. She was probably the most troublesome and scary opponent to date. Having retained her power from her prime meant that she was level 1000. Furthermore, the 7 heroes level 1000 was not the same as the level 1000 you would see elsewhere. They were the no-lifers who had perfected themselves to the pinnacle of their specialization by consuming the meat, doping, of the countless monsters they had slaughtered. One back in the game, Bennett Nash had the second highest total stats and sat in the position right behind mine too. Additionally, with her latent vampire race bonus, she was especially a terrifying opponent. If the time of face-off was during the morning or the afternoon, I was slightly stronger than her. However, if it was during the night, she most likely would win. Also considering from the fact that she was aiming for my head, it was unlikely that a player was inside her. Although this was a provisional A.S. assessment, this account established that all of the 7 heroes were people of this world. In other words, Dina and I were the only people to come from the other side. And then there was Lion, the strongest of the 12 heavenly stars who was currently at war with Bennett Nash. The worst thing was that both of them were showing hostility towards me. Which was to say, if I accidentally or casually got close to them, I would have to face both the vampire princess and the lion at the same time. Even for me, that was too much. It was not something to joke about. I think I've decided not to go near Bennett Nash for a while. Next was the hero. I determined there was a real and foreseeable possibility that the hero was going to be killed, thus I returned all the way to Leavitian. But in reality, I was in for a surprise as the Demon King's aim was me. Furthermore, the existence of the hero was not even significant in his eyes. This meant that even if I left the hero alone for a while, it was likely that there would be no problem. There was still a possibility that the 7 luminaries would aim for him, but close to the hero was a tiger over level 100, as well as 2 other decently strong people. Furthermore, there were few rangers blending in with the shadows, thus they should somehow manage things unless the 7 luminaries plotted against them. Well, perhaps it was not a bad idea for me to make a golem that would protect the hero for the 1-in-a-million situation. And lastly, the real goal. To find out the goal and the intention of the original Ruppas and to create an issue for the G.O.Dis who had selfishly gotten me involved on her whim with her scenario. Whilst I was doing that, I would bring the G.O.Dis out into the open and ask her what her intention was. I did not know what the G.O.Dis was thinking when she put me inside Ruppas. It was also unknown what she had wanted me to do. But, no, that was why I wanted to know. I had to know. If I did not find out, I would not be able to move forward. I would just be continuing to stomp on my spot. I had enough with wandering about without being able to have a foothold, without being able to put my feet down, without knowing where the sinkholes or the goal was. That was why I was going to stop and return to the starting position. And this was the retaliation against the G.O.Dis. Right now, I was thankful and appreciative of the progression of my consciousness assimilating into that of Ruppas's. If I had remained as myself, I doubt I would have even gotten to thinking things this way. If I had remained as the ever-hopeful, dumb, and whimsical self, even at this moment, I would not have questioned anything and still would have said something stupid like yay, the world of the game I loved, and be enjoying this world like an idiot. Even though I had somehow suddenly gotten thrown into the world of MMO, I would be baffled yet be greatly overjoyed. Although this reaction looked like it was looking at the reality, it was just a sign of escape. One would not even be looking for a way to return to the original world. The only job I would have would be to think about myself. And the only aim would be to satisfy oneself at the expense of someone else they come across. Anything troublesome would be complained as troublesome by me, yet I would be joyful of those troublesome things and head in straight towards them whilst calling those troublesome things troublesome, and Wisconsin H.I+NG those troublesome things would continue. 3. I would be gleefully waiting for the stage that I myself would be able to act and look cool. I wanted to be praised, I wanted to be recognized, I wanted to be revered, I wanted to be wars.H.I+PPED, I wanted to be raised up, I wanted to be respected, and I wanted to be drunk in the feeling of knowing that I was a cool existence in this dreamlike world. Ah, so nonsensical. I was able to live in a peaceful country of J.A.Pan and not have to worry about what I would wear or eat, and I was even able to peacefully play games without a shred of worry. Yet, even though I was able to live in the world that would truly be considered dreamlike by the people of Midgard, I took it for granted and said I would rather live in the world inside the game than be stuck living in this boring place, and was unable to appreciate what I already had. I was unable to see what was right in front of me. Someone strange and deranged like that was who I was. I'll admit it. For the G.O.Dis, I was someone that was easy to handle and make use of. In such a way, I might have been a perfect and easy existence to blanket the individual called Ruppas. Well, of course, that was the case. This chapter is only available on 2M0REFR33 Thoughts. I was someone that lived in a peaceful country of J.A.Pan without a shred of worry as I lived my life whilst being immersed in the game. On the other hand, there was Ruppas who had spent her days in the world of Midgard fighting day in and day out. It was given that there would be a difference in the willpower and strength between the two of us. It was something so self-explanatory that one did not even have to think hard to reach such a conclusion. Nevertheless, the lid was already being taken off. I sensed that for myself. Come read for free at the original source 2 more free thoughts. I knew that such a situation would not last long. This was. I should hurry up and meet with the G.O.Dis to get myself returned to my original world. If I failed to do such a thing, next time, it was going to be me that would be sealed into the pot by the lid known as Ruppas. Even for me, it was something I wanted to avoid. Anyways, reviewing is done. Now that I think about it, I'm a useless person. I stood in the position to have finally recognized that I was in a dangerous and precarious situation due to how far the A.S. simulation with Ruppas had progressed. If you are seeing these lines, maybe you should read at the original source? Come visit 2 more free thoughts. Notwithstanding, it was truly ironic and comical that I could not help but laugh that something ridiculous like this had to happen for me to finally open my eyes and see what was in front of me. Or more like, I knew how warped my face was at that moment from the smile that I had. If you are seeing these lines, it means you are reading on an aggregate website. Rupa-sama. Aries, who was sitting next to me, questioned with a slightly tactful tone. Stop with the upturned eyes already. Even knowing that Aries was male, there was quite a powerful effect. Whilst thinking that, I turned my line of sight towards him. What is it? No, Were you thinking about something? What makes you think that? Your faces. Face. Yes. You know. I've been thinking that recent Rupa-sama was very calm, serene and easygoing compared to the past, or at least gave off that feeling, but the expression Rupa-sama just showed somehow reminded me of the old Rupa-sama. Is that so? It seemed even my face was finally showing Rupa's now. This really might be getting quite bad. My consciousness still remained right now, but at this rate, it really might disappear at any moment. I did not know how much time I had left, however, there was no doubt that duration decreased by visiting Vinayamur. And unfortunately, as I continued to regain Rupa's memory and recall her intention, my consciousness would continue to fade. If you are seeing these lines, it means you are supporting a thief. Nevertheless, if I did not try to do so, I would not even be able to grasp a trace of the person who had gotten me involved. If I continued to do nothing due to the fear of my consciousness disappearing, I would only be walking into the G.O.Disa scheme, as I was sure that was the reason I was here in the first place. What the H.E.L.I was this S.H.I plus TTY game? The closer I got to the clearing the game, the closer I was to game over. Although it was possible to extend the duration, I would only be dancing on the palm of the schemer. It truly was just some S.H.I plus TTY game. In any event, for now, I was going to devote myself to retrieving the remaining 12 heavenly stars like the Scorpion. So in summary, what I was going to do was not that different from what I had been doing until this point. Gakaros, do you know the next country Scorpius is going to aim? Yes. Scorpius stated that the next country to fall will be Blutgong. If you are reading this, a kitten has died in the heart of the translator. When the Tler's heart runs out of cute kittens to fuel his PAS.Zion, the Tealer may rage quit. Blutgong. The country founded by Mizar, As this country did not have the protection of an active 7 heroes, compared to the countries such as Svalin or Gillerhorn, it should be easier to topple. Furthermore, it was the world's leading industrial country where all the tradesmen resided, thus it was a very important location. Considering the destruction of the country of Hradi, it seemed that Scorpius's intention was to topple the weaker locations first. Dina. Who is the final 12 heavenly stars that you know the location of? It is Karkinos-sama of the crab. 4 Karkinos. If I recall correctly, out of the 12 heavenly stars, he was the one who most excelled in defense. He had needlessly high endurance and an extremely hard SHE.L.L. He could protect and S.H.I plus eld his allies by using a skill called covering, becoming an impeccable wall. 5 On the other hand, he only possessed a single offensive skill which just happened to be a counter-exclusive ability, thus making him a very inefficient and lopsided character. Nevertheless, his only offensive skill Acubens was a fairly strong skill that would deal half of all damage back to the enemy. 6 For example, if Acubens was activated against Brachium, a value of 50,000 would be added to the final damage which would be dealt to the enemy. If you consider the fact that the skill would become stronger as the enemy became stronger, it was indeed a very fearsome skill. However, his affinity with Scorpion was the worst. As the damage suffered from the poison inflicted by the enemy was not added to the counter by the system, his HP would be one-sidedly shaved down. Furthermore, as the poison-inflicted damage was not affected by the defensive stats, his HP would be shaved down even faster than it should. For better or worse, he was very easy to counter. Where is he located? He is at Blutgong. The destination matches. I suppose I should take this as a good convenience. It might also be an inconvenience, you know. Karkinos and Scorpius would be at the same location. No, Scorpius was still aiming to go to that location. In any event, whilst Scorpius was not there yet, it was determined that the location for both of them would be the same. And for me, it was a good opportunity for me to retrieve 2 of the stars at the same time and save time on traveling. However, it was too optimistic to think that nothing would happen when 2 of the stars met each other. Even up until now, the only star to not have created any problem was Parthenos. As for Ares and Agacharos, they went around doing whatever they want without regards to the trouble they might cause, and even worse, when the 2 of them met, they started fighting with each other on their own. In other words, even if they were within the same 12 heavenly stars, it was reasonable to assume that they might start killing each other instead of saying, "Long time no see. Have you been well?" No, this time around, even if they hit off with each other, it would be very bad. As one could expect, if the scorpion and the crab teamed up, Blutgong would be annihilated in less than a day. The combination between the perfect defensive capability of the crab who would not let any enemy pass and the protected scorpion who could mindlessly spread poison to the heart's content. Even imagining that alone would make one realize how horrible of a combination they would be. With something like that, there was a need for me to reach Blutgong in a hurry. Author note, Bennett, good, Moffel left Vinayamur. Is it about time that she starts coming this way? I should prepare to face her. That's right, I should think of and prepare for a speech for when I meet her. But I don't want to be seen as if I was waiting for her, so maybe I should act like I'm uninterested. Fidgety aid, looks like they decided to head towards Blutgong. Let's not go near Betnitnash for a while, by, Ruppas Bennett, Omega, author note end, __1 in gaming, though, it's sometime used elsewhere. People who play all day long and dedicate their life to the game, either because they don't have a job, no social life, no school, or they're just in a holiday and can play all day long, are called to have no life. Not really a derogatory term, but definitely doesn't have a positive meaning to it. The term neat might be more well known to non-gamers but read other novels/manga or watch anime. But technically, neat and gaming term no life is not the same. No-lifers, sorry for the lack of translation skill, can be used neutrally in some circuit-misstance, but words like otaku or neat in J.A. Pains is quite a bad insult. English readers might proudly call themselves that, but there's actually quite a bad connotation to them in J.A. Pan, both to their social life and career. The author specifically didn't use the term neat. Keep in mind that neat is a J.A. Pains term, and used the term, which is used to mean invalid or crippled. 2 stats are those int, str, luck, mind, etc. that you see listed. Sometime called attributes. 3. Yes, the author is repeating the word troublesome for a reason. Yes, the author is trying to make that sentence convoluted and repeating. 4. Crab equals cancer. Karkinos is the Greek name for cancer. https://n.wikipedia.org/wiki/zodiac #12_signs. 5 covering equals 6 Acubens equals, aka Alpha Cancri, star system in the constellation of Cancer. https://en.wikipedia.org/wiki/alpha_cancri. Save for the few exceptional scenarios, Midgard's construction technology was superior to that of what the Earth possessed. This superiority came from the fact that there was no fantasy-like power such as alchemy back on Earth. Even if it was something impossible to build back on Earth, using alchemy, it could easily be made possible. For example, the unnecessarily big royal tomb only took 10 years to build because alchemy was utilized. If the same thing was to be built back on Earth, it would have taken a lot longer to complete. Nevertheless, there was a limit to everything. Even if it was alchemy, not everything was possible as there existed limitations on its usage. However, in every society, there were those rare individuals that could be called prodigies amongst the geniuses and at times, these prodigies were able to ignore what everyone else considered to be a norm and go out of bounds to such an extraordinary extent that they were able to reach a domain where n.o. body thought was possible to land. In other words, it was that the man called Mizar could be categorized into that type. That was what I was made aware of. This chapter is only available on 2M0REFR33 Thoughts. We traveled in Tanaka for a few days. What we ended up reaching was that enormous, or more like some castle-like structure that was way too enormous. Its height could reach the sky and its length was definitely well over a kilometer. Huh? Or rather, was this a castle? That? Not to mention there were various cannons sticking out from here and there. This just looked like a battles.h.I+p. Whilst I was standing blankly in a daze, Dina spoke to me. I just went to have a look. That is our next destination, the mobile capital Blutgong. Mobile capital. Yes. The Smith King Mizar's final and greatest invention. That is what Blutgong is. A golem with the height of 300 m, length of 1100 m and the width of 400 m, and created using Orichalk.u.m, it has managed to repel all the advances made by the demons. I have heard that the inside is split into 15 different floors and consists of different areas for residential and business purposes. The whole capital itself was a giant weapon. This was scary. What the hell? Who would imagine that the very target of the advance, the capital itself, was going to commence attack? Not to mention, it was a level 770 golem created using cash shop item. It was not funny at all. Or more like, Mizar, aren't you living in the wrong world? If anything, this golem looked like something that should appear in a robot anime featuring S.P.A.ce wars. Why are you making an enormous S.P.A.ce wars.h.I+p under the fantasy setting? Why didn't you think about how mismatched it was to this world? So he turned the whole capital into a golem. I was surprised about Levia, but this is more than that. Well, maybe I should be saying as expected of the Smith King. Wow. It's so big. Virgo was looking dumbfounded next to me with her mouth wide open. Her pure white wings were frantically moving, making it very easy to see how excited she was. Ares and Agakeros must have already known about this as they made no reaction. Strangely, even though Libra had no emotion, she seemed proud of this. Ah, I had forgotten, but Mizar was like a parent to her. Well, it's a golem as it seems, so it's extremely strong against any physical attack. Looks like it. Even Ares or Libra would struggle and have to put in quite a lot of effort to take that down. Apparently, in the case of emergency, it's able to transform into a humanoid form. It seems it's even possible to trade punches with an enemy. At this rate, everything is a go, huh? Yeah. Having said that, compatibility with Scorpius is the worst, isn't it? Blutgong was a golem. As a consequence, poison did not work against it. Thus in a way, it was in an advantageous position in a fight against Scorpius. Notwithstanding, the people inside were a completely different story. However firm Blutgong itself was, if everyone on the inside was sacred by the poison, it was a practical defeat. If anything, due to the closure of being placed within a golem, it was easier for the poison to spread throughout. It seemed coming to this place in a hurry was not a mistake after all. Rapasama, what should we do about disguises? I recall that a dwarf's lifespan was not that long. Then I guess, there shouldn't be much of a problem as long as I hide my wings. I'll go with the clothing that was provided by Migres this time. To Libra's question, I replied by selecting the clothing I previously received from Migres. There were two options on what I could wear when I went outside. One was to completely cover myself and look like a suspicious person, and the other was to use the bandage that I received from Migres and show myself daringly. Under the first option, there was very little chance of my wings being seen by others. However, I would look like a suspicious person, thus would be doubted from the initial encounter. Under the latter option, I would not look like a suspicious person. However, there would be a troublesome consequence if someone that knew my face were to see me. There were an advantage and disadvantage to both, thus it was important that I used them correctly. If the others would not have remembered my face, it was better to boldly step out with only my wings hidden than be overly cautious and cover myself entirely. The more one tried to sneakily do something, the more suspicious they became. I made Agakeros turn his back towards my side and tried to start changing. At this moment, Ares also turned around in a hurry. Ah, not good. I forgot Ares was also a male. His appearance was completely that of a girl, so I had forgotten. To a confused Virgo, Libra explained, that thing is a male. Ah, Rapasama. It's fine to continue whilst being in Tanaka. Blutgong has a dock that can store golems. That's convenient. As advised by Dina, we continued to progress without stepping out of Tanaka. When we reached in front of the castle, with a gasa-gasa sound, a walking armor came out from the castle. It was probably Blutgong's patrolling golem. From the look of it, their average level was around level 50. These did not look like they were the product of Mizar. Please stop right there. Please state your reason for entry and show your permit. Thank you very much. I'm the wandering merchant Dina. I came here to conduct business. Here is the permit. Dina made an answer and flashed her permit in front of the patrolling golem's eyes. When she did that, the area around the golem's eyes flashed in blue light and made a funny-looking beep sound. Maybe it was scanning the permit? Checking the permit completed. Next up, I will check inside the golem. At the same time as the patrolling golem made that statement, Dina got out of Takana and gestured towards everyone else to come out. It seemed we were to wait outside until the golem finished checking the inside. As there was no reason for us to retaliate against this, everyone obediently followed Dina's instructions. They are inspecting inside the golem and making sure no dangerous material is brought inside. The thing that Blutgong needs to be most cautious of are the demons or the likes infiltrating inside. And, if in case there was someone like Jupiter who was disguised as a human, most of them would be caught here. I see. But if it was something like that, wouldn't something like Libra be flagged here? Libra may have had the appearance of a maid, however, inside of her was packed with a surprising amount of armaments. Let alone all the external weapons like the machine gun, even the built-in weapons on Libra should easily be considered out. Putting it in another way, it would not be incorrect to think of her as a walking danger item. That was what I was thinking. Nevertheless, the patrolling golems did not even say anything about Libra to us. Please do not worry, Master. There is too much of a difference in quality between me and them. Inferior golems that can only crudely scan the surface would not be able to see past my disguise. Is that so? Yeah, she's definitely a dangerous item. What was scary? Well, the fact that she would not even be caught at all at the inspection points was scary. However, something that might have been flagged was not just Libra. Agakeros was hiding inside my shadow so they would not say anything about him. However, the problem was Ares. Notwithstanding, the patrolling golems again did not say anything in regards to Ares, and gave us the permission to pass through. While I was being curious about this point, I noticed that Dina was making a triumphant look. Did you use the concealment of the status? Exactly, it looked like Dina used her cheat and managed to fool them. When it came to stuff like that, she was really reliable. After being let through by the golems, Tanaka, who was carrying the lot of us, said through the gate and entered into Blutgong. After passing through the gate, which was surrounded by steel 360 degrees, we were stopped by the hand signal of a dwarf in worker's clothing who was probably a guide. Hey, we'll take care of the golem over here. It's forbidden to travel in a golem inside the capital. Understood. Everyone, let's use our feet from here on out. After putting Tanaka under the dwarf's care, we continued to stand in front of the large door which we assumed would continue to the capital. When we did so, the dwarf operated the switch that was next to the door. Subsequently, the large door made a heavy sound and opened. The large door opened sideways and the inside of Blutgong was bared for us to see. What was in front of us was without a doubt, a city. A painting of the blue sky on the ceiling which was mimicking the real sky was at the top and artificial light was S.H.I plus ning down. Although the area was only 1100 m. In length times the width of 400 m, and buildings were crammed next to each other. There were major roads, parks, and various stores throughout. The ceiling was also fairly high, which I estimated was probably around 20 m, allowing us to avoid feeling oppressed or entrapped. There were even residential apartments and mansions that one might have forgotten that it was inside a golem if they did not keep it in mind. As I looked around, due to my curiosity getting the better of me, surprisingly, instead of the usual Dina, Libra started with the exposition. Out of the 15 floors within Blutgong, the residential areas occupies up to the 8th floor. Each area is called the first city, the second city, and so on. The 9th and the 10th floors are commercial areas. There are various stores lined up in this area. 11th to 13th floors are office areas. All companies that exist within Blutgong are lined up on these floors. Factories and storages make up about half of these. The 14th floor is the royal area. Only the royalty and those deemed worthy by the royalty are allowed in access. And finally, the 15th floor has Blutgong's main command center and is only accessible by very limited individuals. The high-level golems created by Mizar-sama is also stored in this floor. You're quite informed. Blutgong is like a little brother to me. It's a pretty big little brother, oi. I wanted to make that tsukumai but was barely able to hold it back as I looked at the side of Libra's face, which remained emotionless as usual. Although the size and the creation was different, both Libra and Blutgong had the common point of being the products of Mizar. In all likelihood, there were some things that were being considered by her. And Karkanos is somewhere in this capital. There's no mistake with that, right? Yes. There should not be any mistake this time. To my question, Dina purposefully replied with an emphasis on this time. Previously, even though she said that Parthinos was here, when we actually got to the location, Parthinos had already said away. Dina was probably keeping that in her mind when she was replying. Personally, after seeing that even Dina was not a perfect person, I could more intimately relate to her. However, there was no reason for me to tell her that. Well, for now, let's get something to fill out stomach. Fortunately, it seems there are still restaurants in the residential areas. During the early days, the restaurants were only placed in the commercial areas. However, due to the complaints received from the citizens that it was bothersome to travel to the stores every time, some of the general goods stores and eateries were moved to the residential areas. We were walking about the city as Libra was explaining things. Compared to the cities that we have seen thus far, everything including the buildings looked new. Of course, compared to the modern world J.A.Pan, there were still aspects that looked outdated. However, it did not give off the feeling of old by any mean. I would say it was recent. Describing the city as something you might imagine of 18th or 19th century London, might best fit how it looked it. Of course, not everything looked like that. I just phrased it that way because it best matched what I would recall from the back of my mind. There might have been better ways to describe it, but it was simply just easiest for me to describe it as such. As such, it was not as if there were bridges here and there like you would expect from the London of that time. To begin with, there were not even large lakes or rivers that would require bridges in the first place. There were small ones here though. Although I stated that the buildings were big, because there was a physical limitation called the ceiling, everything was still in small scales. Well, it was whatever. For now, I just wanted to get something to eat. It was not as if I had not eaten anything, but because we were on a journey, all food products that were stored in Tanaka were things would last for a long time. Although there was a thing that somewhat resembled a refrigerator, it was far from being the real one. To begin with, because I did not know the mechanics behind how the refrigerator worked, I just casually created a box that somewhat sealed things well and used Dina's water magic to fill it up with ice. Which was to say, rather than a refrigerator, it was more like a cooler box. It was better than not having anything at all, but something was different. It just wasn't it. As a consequence, when we reached a city or a town, we would usually end up eating at those places. Eating good food allowed us to better avoid being stressed out too. So I was just stating the obvious. Rapasama. Doesn't this place look nice? Yeah. Personally, I think the store with the crab sign across the road also looks interesting. The shop that Virgo was pointing at was a nice-looking store that was surprisingly made out of wood. There were various plants that were lined up in front of the store and gave off a good atmosphere. But for me, I could not avoid feeling curious about the store that boldly gave off a beach feeling by putting that crab sign even whilst being inside this golem. Having said that, because we were traveling with others and Virgo who had just recently joined us was being assertive, I thought I would fold here. As for the crab store, the next time we get an opportunity, we can give it a visit. Anyways, this store here also has a nice atmosphere. Let's go in this store this time. 3 Yay! Virgo had a childish personality like that of Aries, however, she had a bright personality unlike Aries. She had a happy and vivid personality which made people smile when they looked at her. I thought that Aries's personality was too reserved, thus I would have preferred that he learnt some things from her. As I was thinking that, we opened the door to the restaurant and entered inside. Now then, I just hope some weird dish won't come out. Author note, Mobile Capital Blutgong, the final invention of the Smith King Mizar from back in his prime. Height 300 m, length 1100 m. In its humanoid's form, it transforms into a height of 1100 m, length 300 m. After finding an abnormality in his spirit, he put all that he could into creating this whilst he retained his sanity. It was for the purpose of protecting oneself, even in his time of weakness and death. If you were to forcibly push people in, it was possible to accommodate a few million people, with its agricultural plants. In case it was attacked, the capital itself was able to move and retaliate and slash or escape. Inside, besides the golems created by the dwarves, there were average level 300 super golems on standby that were able to repel the advances from the demons, though the Demon King and his son were not included in this list. In case it was pushed into the corner, there were Ma.S.S produced Libra-type golems on standby that were created using Libra's blueprint. Although the hero himself was absent, its ability to preserve itself was definitely a top CLA.S.S in Midgard. Ma.S.S produced Libra-type imitations that looked just like Libra. The color of the hair was different from the originals, it was white. Its built-in armaments were either the left scale or the right scale. It came with the ability to fly and track enemies as well as various firearms. There are a total of 4 in existence, all of which are level 700. In case there appeared an enemy that not even Blutgong could handle, it was reserved as a trump card for final defense line. Originally there were 5 of them, however, during the fight with the Demon King, Mizar took one along and ended up being destroyed. Q. Why are there mostly level 300 golems? If it's Mizar, shouldn't he be able to create golems up to level 700? A. He had his hands full in creating the Blutgong itself and Ma.S.S producing golems. After his golem squad were defeated by the Demon King, I think he probably thought it's better than nothing and created them out of whim. Q. Create a golem out of nature like Migraz. A. I will only recognize if the golem is made out of metal. Mizar. Welcome. Would it be a group of 6? When we entered the restaurant, we were greeted by a small girl with an APR.O.N. From the quick look of the girl, I estimated her age to be around 12 years old. However, her true age was probably not what it looked like. Fundamentally, dwarves were a race with short height. They were also a race that was hard to estimate the age based on appearance. Back in the game, they were called shadow hobbits and were originally the same species as the hobbits. What created the distinction between the shadow hobbits and the sun hobbits depended on whether they decided to live in the caves or roam free on the land. Fundamentally, when one imagined the hobbit race, they were talking about the Floresiensis. In a fictional work it would correspond with species such as gra.s.s__na or half__ngs. However, that was not accurate too if you were to be specific. Dwarves were also of the hobbit race. Having said that, in the end, it was merely the background setting and no one really paid any attention to it. As such, even from now I will continue to call the Floresienses as the hobbits and the dwarves as dwarves. Official names were just that. Even back on Earth, we called the hedgehogs as a needle mouse even though it was closer in species to a mole than a mouse 3, but no one really cared about stuff like that and continued to call it the needle mouse. In other words, it was similar to that. In the fictional fantasy works, dwarves were usually short in height and had long and bushy beards. Dwarves in Midgard were not different in that regard. Short height was the race's trademark and the male dwarves all grew their beards long. Notwithstanding, they did not age particularly fast and were not significantly different when compared to the human race. Putting it bluntly, they simply did not shave their beard and thus the aging process was the same as that of the human. However, I heard that, because the male dwarves often did more physical labor, they ended up looking manlier. Most probably due to natural evolution based on that, just by working a little, male hormones gashed out making them buffed up and muscular very quickly, as well as making their eyebrows thick and bushy. As a consequence, beards also grew at an extraordinary rate. Furthermore, in dwarven societies, the chiseled featured or the so-called uncle face is considered to be handsome, for as such, whoever they were, by the time they reached their 30s, they looked like they had turned into Santa Claus. Needless to say, any cleanly shaven human that would be considered handsome by the human society would not even be taken into consideration by the dwarven women. The dwarven women, on the other hand, preferred to look like a legal lowly 5, though by the time they entered their 40s, they simply looked like a short grandma. What would you like to order? Baromet's soup. 6. To the woman's question, I looked at the menu and answered. In the past, I had wanted to try this if I ever had the chance to go to the world of Midgard. Back in the game, food was considered to be a recovery item, and this soup was one of those. It was a magical beast that had an interesting mutation, and its origin was, probably, a plant. It looked similar to the gourd, and for some reason, from inside the plant you could harvest small lambs. If N.O. body harvested the small lamb, the plant would mature into an adult and stick only the face out of the fruit whilst eating the nearby GRA.S and eventually eating itself to death. It made no sense. In a way, the very existence of itself felt like a troll or a failure. 7. In any event, it was a convenient existence. Even its hooves were made out of wool, thus its whole body could be turned into a material to be used. For the alchemists, it could be considered a strong ally of some sort. It was considered basic for the low-level alchemists to start off by hunting baromets and turning its wool into equipment. Well, in my case, since I had been serving as a vanguard before I became an alchemist, by the time I became one, I was able to casually hunt other magical beasts and dinosaurs. To top things off, since I had Ares to provide me with highest grade material called the rainbow wool, putting it bluntly, I had absolutely no need for baromets. Anyways, those baromets had a nice flavor to them, with its meat tasting like a crab, or so I read in the descriptions. But, one could not help but think it was a gag by now. No, it really was considered to be a joke back in the game. It was probably what the developers had intended to achieve as well. Notwithstanding, to be stuck in that state in reality in this world. I could not help but pity them. Well, yeah, even if I said that, I was still going to eat it though. Or so I was thinking, but I noticed that Ares was staring intently at me. No, actually I think I'll have a mushroom soup. I noticed my lack of consideration and quickly changed my order. I was being careless. To eat a sheep in front of Ares, who was a sheep, was not a good idea. Though there was a question as to whether baromets could be called a sheep in the first place. Of course, I knew that he would not have blamed me for it. However, there was a scary thought that he would say Rapasama's favorite food is a sheep and begin cutting pieces off of his body. Well, this was a problem. I should avoid eating the meat corresponding to the animals represented by the members of the 12 heavenly stars. I will have the salad A.S. assortment. I will also have that. Me too. I will have baromet's soup. Whilst Dina, Ares, and Agakeros were making an order of salad, Virgo ordered baromets without reservation. She paid absolutely no mind to Ares's line of sight. Or more like, she did not even notice it. And I will also have goat milk porridge. And this time, she went for a goat. Agakeros's stare was added on top of Ares, but still, she did not notice it. In a way, she was an amazing person. In any event, I'm surprised that there are ingredients inside this golem. That's because inside the golem, there are agricultural plants. List of things grown ranges from baromets and other easy-to-grow produce, such as fruit of EIR, as well as a variety of potato species and vegetables. Though, half of the ingredients are being imported from elsewhere. When I made a query of Dina, and as she started answering, Libra cut in from the side. Dina, who had her exposition role taken away, was making a vexed face. However, Libra was making an I don't care face. You guys, why did you want the exposition role so much? Well, whatever. What was important now was the food. The soup that was carried to me had various mushrooms cut in different shapes and sizes, making it look quite delicious. There were a few things that I could not recognize, but to begin with, I was not too versed in mushrooms themselves. I could not even distinguish the difference in taste between matsutake mushrooms and S.H.I plus Miji mushrooms, thus as long as it was not a poisonous mushroom, I was fine with anything nine and the taste. Yeah, there was just a good amount of salt in the dish. Although demons now occupied the majority of the land in Midgard, for the remaining lands that the humanoids had to be neighboring an ocean could be considered a silver lining. The place I had a little skirmish with the Demon King previously, in other words, around the country of Laevitian. If I recalled correctly, there was an ocean connected to that place. Salt was an important substance that the body needed. If all the land that was connected to the sea was taken away, even if there was no war, the humanoids would start dying. Anyways, as I expected, the culinary skill in this world had not progressed as much as it had back on Earth. It felt like it was boiled and seasoned with salt half-heartedly. Well, it was how it was. After all, Midgard was currently in the middle of a world war. The nutrient and the quant.I.Ti was given priority over the taste of the food. There was no room to be able to pursue the taste of the food, and there certainly was not an ingredient to be wasted in experimenting for the taste. As a natural consequence, the culinary field had not progressed greatly. I remembered seeing a variety show on the television in the past, and in it, there was a famous but stubborn chef who owned a ramen restaurant. He was taking his son in as a disciple, but due to his son's inability, he was dissatisfied with the taste of the final product. As a consequence, after taking a single sip, he became angry and threw it onto the ground. If such an act was done in this world, he would not be able to complain even if he was punched. Trying to pursue great flavor was splendid. It was no secret that everyone wanted to eat something nice. In this world, however, there simply was not enough to allow for such a luxury. Furthermore, many seasonings were lacking or non-existent in this world. This was most likely a major factor in hindering the advancement of the culinary field. Although it was a common fantasy trope, in this world, black pepper was considered to be a luxury item under the setting. In fact, back in the game, black pepper was sold for a great value as a cash shop item. I believe the origin of black pepper was limited or whatnot. Notwithstanding, it was not as valuable as it was back in the Middle Ages back on Earth. Back on Earth, black pepper was worth its weight in gold. However, this was the result of the combination of the Great Age of Discovery and the lack of refrigeration. If one were seeking to cross a sea, black pepper was indispensable for long-term preservation of ingredients. Nevertheless, in this world, it was not undergoing the Age of Discovery and had a convenient existence called water arcane magic. If one wanted to store an ingredient for a long time, all they had to do was to freeze something using water arcane magic. Of course, ice created using arcane magic would eventually turn back to mana. When that happened, however, all one had to do was to use the arcane magic again. As a consequence, in regards to storing ingredients, there was no need for black pepper. I'm satisfied would be going too far. However, it was a relief on being able to eat non-preserved food for the first time in a while. Once we were full, we made the payments and left the store. What we should do next was without a doubt, to find Karkinos. However, as we did not know where he was, all we could do was to search every corner. Notwithstanding, to search every corner of this wide Bletgong would take a very long time. Additionally, as there were private dwellings here and there, thus it was impractical to actually search every corner. We were not a hero in an RPG game, as such we were unable to storm into whatever house we wanted. Libra, is it not possible to search for Karkinos' location? I have been doing so from before. If I am given time, I will be able to A.N.A.lies every citizen's breathing to find a one that matches with my memory. May you wait a while? In that case, we shall wait until Libra finishes searching. It looked like the search for Karkinos' location would be sorted out if Libra was here. She had said that she would need some time, however, it would still be far quicker than finding him on foot. At that moment, Dina raised her finger as if she thought of something. Ah, if that's the case, would you mind if I go shopping? We're about to run out of the stored food and water. In that case, I will accompany you as a bodyguard. To Dina, who said that she needed to do some shopping, Libra surprising offered to accompany her as a bodyguard. I believed that if it was Dina, she would be fine. However, if Libra went with her, I would definitely feel at ease. Or more like, I would have wanted to suggest that myself. I did not feel that there would be a danger to Dina. As a level 1000, she would be able to handle most things on her own. However, there was a scary feeling of not knowing what Dina would do if she was left alone. After all, she was a double spy of the demons, and I did not know what she would do in the background. Though she was added as a comrade knowing all this. But if Libra was near her, even if it was Dina, she would not be able to take strange actions. If I had to make an issue, it would be whether Libra would be able to direct her effort elsewhere, as she was in the middle of searching for Karkinos. That was it. Please feel at ease. I am able to guard sufficiently even if I am searching for someone. If anything, as there are surveillance in every floor of this golem, it would be more efficient for me to get closer to the central command. I see, then I will leave it to you. Thank you for leaving it to me. To buy food, Dina and Libra left our group, leaving me with absolutely nothing to do. I wonder what I should do until they come back. We had just finished eating and there were no convenience stores here to kill time 11 as such. The only thing I could do was to walk around. Okay, until Dina and Libra come back, you're free to move on your own. Each should make sure you're not causing a problem for the people in the city. Rapasama, what are you going to do? I think I will have a look around the city a little. In that case, I will come with you. Me too. Ah, then me too. When I said I was going to walk around the city, the sheep, the goat, and the maiden all decided to tag along. What was this? Was this one of those things you often see in RPG where hero walked in a neat line with his friends and allies trailing behind them? This made me feel hard to walk around. You guys can do what you like, you know. Walking together with Rapasama is what I like doing. Me too. If I'm alone, I'm going to get lost, so. I tried to tell them to go away in a roundabout way, however, all three of them showed no sign of wanting to separate. I could understand the reasoning behind Virgo's statement, but Aries' loyalty felt a little heavy. I did not know if it was just me not paying attention, but I felt as though Agakeros had been saying nothing but me too since a while ago. Sigh, at this rate, it looked like I really would not be getting free time by myself for a while. No, well, it was not like I disliked it, but about these guys anyways. __. The GRA.S. land that led towards Svalin. There, 8 men were struggling in a fight against over 30 magical beasts. The young man with black hair. Sei was swinging his weapon katana, which was entrusted to him by the king, in order to ward off the beasts which were assaulting him. These beasts had the appearance similar to that of hyenas you might see back on Earth, however, their hair appeared poisonous with purple and pink color. These beasts were called Fool and had an average level of 20, and were something that could easily be handled by trained warriors and knights. Nevertheless, that was a statement that only applied if there were a limited number of them. There was no doubt even these mobs were a troublesome enemy if there were many. Fwa. Notwithstanding, even at this time, Sei's heart was not broken and his feet continued to move while he continued precisely to swing his sword. He, who was forced to see 2 of the world's scariest ties at the same time, had become desensitized and resistant to something like this. Whoever the enemy and however strong the magical beast, all he could think was, compared to those 2 last bosses, these are nothing. Additionally, his weapon was extraordinary. The weapons from the royal tomb of Black Wings cut so well that it was scary. It also served to compensate for Sei's inexperience and unskillfulness. Looking around, he noticed that Cruz was using divine magic to support the allies whilst Jean was using various weapons to crudely cut down the magical beasts. Gantz swung his battleaxe and cut down multiple magical beasts in a single swing. Friedrich, on the other hand, had acted as if he had regained his wild beast instinct, Cruz.H.I+NG the fools with his feet, tearing them apart with his claws and biting them to death. Hey, use your sword, Sword Saint. Gwoo. The Sword Saint howled, causing the magical beasts to become intimidated. It was said that wild beasts were sensitive to those stronger than themselves, thus these magical beasts had likely sensed instinctively that Friedrich was stronger than themselves. They quickly ran away in all directions and the silence returned to that location. Pu. As the fight ended, tension dissipated. When that happened, SEI was salted with the feeling of wanting to puke everything out. He quickly covered his mouth and forcibly held down the stuff that was going up his throat. Even though he had gotten quite used to it, he still had some instinctual hesitation in killing living things with his own hands. Although he was now a hero, he had been living in the peaceful country of J.A. until quite recently. Even the meat that he ate was the one he purchased from supermarket shelves that were pre-made and packaged. The only living things that he could recall killing by himself were limited to bugs. He did not particularly feel anything when he squished mosquitoes during summer. However, if that were to be replaced by cats or dogs, it was needless to say that he would feel some unpleasantness and hesitation. It was the same as that. Nevertheless, he could not do anything unsightly like vomit. He was well aware that his T.I.tle of the hero was nothing better than a T.I.tle of a clown. From the eyes of the people that held real power, he was no different from a bug. He was literally a small fry that did not even enter into their sight. Yet, there was a thing called pretension. Even if he did not possess any real strength, even if he was not deserving, as long as he had the T.I.tle of a hero, he would be considered and be called as one. As he had accepted that role and a T.I.tle, he had the obligation to act like one. Even though he was like this, there were people who called him a hero. There were also people did not know any better and relied on him. As such, he did not want to act pitifully. Inside himself, there existed a hope that would be crushed if someone blew on it. But all his weak self could do was to keep up a thin veil of pretense. As such, he wanted to at least keep that up. Because it was his obligation once he answered that call for help. The stuff that had climbed out of his stomach and up his throat, the stuff that had already reached his mouth, he forcibly swallowed it back down. Oi, you're still not used to it, SEI. Isn't it about time you at least managed to kill the magical beast casually? If you can't, it's going to be a bit tough going forward. Yeah, might be. Although he affirmed Jean's prompt, inside, he was still hesitating. I'm fine with this, somewhere deep inside of him, he felt this way. Indeed, if he were to hesitate in killing even the magical beasts, he would not be able to last long. He knew that. He had to get used to it. Not wanting to get used to it was just his selfishness. He knew that. But at the same time, he thought that he did not want to become a human being that could mindlessly kill a living thing without feeling anything. Contradiction, he did not want to show his pitifulness. Yet, he did not want himself to be able to kill a living thing without feeling anything. It was not possible to have both ways, yet SEI continued to cling on to both. He wanted to continue feeling the weight of S.N.A.T.C.hing life away. If he were to forget the weight of that, he would lose the sense of justice that he believed in. The country of J.A. that he would eventually return to was a country governed by law. There, laws existed so that people could exist, there were things called morals, and there were things called common sense. He did not want to become someone that would not hesitate to kill a person when he had to go back. Of course, a policeman had to arrest a criminal. If required, they would even fire a firearm and take a life. However, the moment that policeman merrily pointed the gun at someone, to be excited in firing that firearm and be joyful that they get to kill someone, they would no longer deserve to be called a policeman. They would simply be a murderer who used the law as as.h.I+eld. But in this world, it was justice. Someone that was able to enter more battlefield and kill more magical beasts without hesitation was considered to be a greater warrior. And they were the ones that became a hero. Although this greatly resembled SEI's goal of following his father's footstep, it could not be any further in essence. I knew it already, but I'm not suited to being a hero inside a game. I knew I was being naive. It was not kindness. It was naivete. I lacked a resolution. I did not have the right mental attitude. Even though I answered a call for help out of my own free will, even now, I still had not set my feet down yet. Indeed, my feet were physically touching Midgard's soil, nevertheless, my heart was still stuck in the peaceful country of J.A.Pan. As such, I always became a burden on my allies and could not avoid prioritizing J.A.Pan's common sense and moral over Midgard's. If it was just to jump in recklessly, it was easy. If I tell myself that the actions I took were for justice, it was possible to move forward. However, I did not have the ability to make that possible. I did not have the right mindset to make it possible. His actions were not courage but recklessness. As a consequence, SEI did not believe himself to be a hero. The way I'm acting is called reckless, isn't it? I was asked to defeat Rupas and the Demon King. However, it was impossible for him. Or rather, they were not individuals that could be defeated by living things. Even though SEI clearly knew that it was impossible for him, he continued to move forward. That was what you called recklessness. That was why he was not a hero. He was not qualified to be called that. Even then, everyone called him that and placed their hopes onto him. As such, he could not betray their expectations. In this way, he thought that at the very least, he would try and become a hero. He wanted to change his mindset, which had not even reached the starting line. To change from recklessness to courage at the very least. He did not want to walk while looking away from fear. He wanted to walk while acknowledging that fear. If he could not do that, he would not even be able to make the distinction on what was right and what was wrong. Someone that only looked at things that were in their favor and looked away from all that was unfavorable to them. Someone like that would never be able to make a correct judgment on things. Everyone is terrified. They don't try to look at things clearly. Rupa's Maffel is scary strong. Thus she is evil. We should defeat her. We want her to go away. I'm also the same. I don't want to ever meet her again if I can help it. But SEI had one question. Something that he could not ask his allies, a question that he kept to himself. A hypothesis based on the unbiased view that only he could have due to having been brought from another world. Was Rupa's Maffel actually an enemy? Somehow, everyone is hostile towards her to a surprising amount. Even that conversation with the Demon King. No one is thinking deeply about what was being said. They barely brushed it off as a conversation between two evil ties. But to me, that conversation was something different. The Demon King stated even the battle from 200 years ago was the work of the G.O.Dis. Then, maybe the current battle is also the same. In the first place, it was strange for the 7 heroes that should have been her allies to take her down. Mind control? Manipulation of the heart? Amplification of the subconscious fear? I don't know what kind of trick it was, but perhaps it was active even now. The goal of coming to Svalin was to meet and talk with the Wisdom King Migres and ask him about possible hints on how to defeat the Supreme Ruler and the Demon King. Additionally, they hoped that Migres would know how to strengthen the power of the hero. After all, Migres was a man who once reached the pinnacle of level 1000. It was reasonable to think that he knew a special strengthening method the people of this current generation did not. Nevertheless, SEI had a separate goal in mind. Out of his group, only SEI was going to meet Migres for a reason other than to defeat the Supreme Ruler. He was looking to find out what really happened 200 years ago. By personally meeting and talking to the Wisdom King himself, he wanted to find out the circumstances and deduce what Rupas was thinking. He could not continue forward without finding out. He could not continue fighting. He could not limit his field of vision and blindly accept others' judgment that she was evil. It was not a simple issue where he could blindly fire first, then later say, "Oh, it turns out I was wrong. Sorry, mate." He recalled what his late father, who was a police officer, told him. Do not point your gun towards someone by mistake. Police officers stood behind AS.H.I+Ld called the law. They had the power to arrest criminals. But that was exactly why the police officers had to look at the other party impartially and properly. They could not just listen to one side of the story. They had to listen to both sides of the arguments, then only once they have fully understood the situation, they had the obligation to reach a correct answer fairly and justly. Your father made a mistake. I once caught someone that was innocent, and ruined 15 years of his life, and as a consequence of that mistake, he took his own life. Ahesii, your father's no longer an ally of justice. That's why, you mustn't become like me. Whatever you do, you mustn't become someone that blindly follows that feeling of justice and make a mistake. Saying that, Esei's father drowned in his guilt and stress until all his hair turned white, resulting in him escaping to alcohol every waking moment. His father was a man of justice. Whenever it was, his father dreamed that he could be an ally of the weak. Someone that could bring kindness and happiness to all. As such, his father worked every day without rest. Looking at his father's back, Esei believed it was someone that he could be proud of. He told himself that one day, he would become just like that man he was boastful about. That feeling had not changed even now. It's fine, father. Somehow, I'm still rational. Well, actually, I was flipping out quite a bit, but I think I'm still fine. Maybe, probably, most likely. Don't make mistake, did you say? Yeah, I'm not going to make my judgment after listening to just one side of the story. I'm not going to point my gun towards someone I shouldn't be pointing towards. Well, I guess what I'm actually holding is a katana though. I don't even know why there's even a katana in a different world though. But then again, this world was full of strange things I can't understand. But, it's fine. I'm definitely not going to make a mistake in deciding what should be in front of the gun. The young man who was called a hero but believed himself to be insufficient thought strongly in this way. That he could not become a G.O.D of death that would be able to ruthlessly kill the enemies in the name of justice. He knew that he could not become the hero that was expected by the people of this world. Nevertheless, the pillar in his heart did not give way. The sense of justice that was passed on from his father still remained strong inside his heart. That was why he was determined to find it. Not a hero that could mercilessly cut down the enemy as people wanted him to be. But the hero in his heart. In its hand would be a lethal weapon called the justice. And above its head would be a T.I.Tle of hero to justify whatever its action. Behind it, would be a S.H.I plus Eld called a country. That was why he must not make a mistake. A mistake could and would never be forgiven. Not someone that blindly fulfilled justice because they were given the objective, but someone who used their courage to rightfully reach a correct answer. He believed that was what it truly meant to be the hero. The question is. He glanced behind himself. What he saw was a hunting ground of a tiger who was howling and calling the magical beasts who had long lost the will to fight. There was neither justice nor evil involved. Only the beast-like instinct of wanting to fulfill themselves by taking down an enemy in a hunting ground. There's a prey in front of my eyes. It showed its back and is running away. So I will chase it and eat it. That was everything. It had no interest in what the enemy had to say. It would eat if it got hungry. There was no concept of good or evil in this. The wild, they did not care what was logical. This feels like a party that will definitely make a mistake on who it points its spearhead towards. Looking at the tiger who was gobbling up the magical beast, Esei's eyes lost focus. He thought. If you're considered humanoids, at the very least, cook your meat before you eat it.